You do the math. Delaware versus Florida. The tide has turned, but I'm sure you're asking yourself why. Well, here we are, Live, Love, Beach to Bay. I am back with another fabulous installment of why living in coastal Delaware just beats nearly anywhere absolutely else. So I'm going to need to talk to you about something that used to be considered real estate heresy. Absolutely real estate heresy. For decades, absolute decades, the conversation went like this. We're retiring. We want the beach. We're going to Florida. We're taking the plane, headed to the Sunshine State. Full stop, end of discussion. Florida was the dream, the default, the answer before anyone even asked the question. And now, well, I'm going to tell you, the tide has turned. I'm getting calls, real calls, not just one or two, from people who already live in Florida or who were planning to move to Florida. And they're asking me about coastal Delaware, topic that, as you know, I love to chat about. So today we're doing the math together, side by side, line by line, because the numbers tell a story. And the story, it might just change everything you thought you knew. It certainly has been eye-opening to me and eye-opening to so many clients that I'm chatting with. You know who I am, Debbie Siskowski, your realtor here in coastal Delaware. I love all the beach towns from Lewes all the way to Fenwick, everything in between, and this is Live, Love, Beach to Bay. So let's get into it. Absolutely, let's get into it. I'm gonna set the stage why this comparison matters right now. And it's gonna be relevant for, I think, ever and ever. But before we start throwing numbers at each other, let me give you some context, because this isn't just a random debate. It absolutely is something that has genuinely shifted in the last 3 to 4 years. Florida, specifically the popular coastal markets like Naples, Sarasota, Fort Myers, the Space Coast, they've experienced a massive price run-up during and after the pandemic. Values went up dramatically. And along with those values came everything else that also came up pretty significantly, like insurance and taxes and heat. Oh, we can't forget about the heat. Now it is quite warm today in coastal Delaware, but I'd say Florida probably has us beat by about 20 degrees. And then came the hurricanes, not just one, but multiple seasons of significant storm damage that changed the insurance landscape in Florida in ways that are still being felt right now and in years and decades to come. Meanwhile, up here in coastal Delaware, something interesting happened. Yes, we saw price appreciation, but our cost profile stayed comparatively reasonable. Our insurance market did not collapse, and people started looking at us with fresh eyes. So let's compare apples to apples, beach to beach, sun to sun. Love the way that sounds, sun to sun. Okay, so let's talk real estate prices. Let's start with what you actually pay to buy in coastal Delaware. So we can run the spectrum here. And I'm talking Lewes, Rehoboth Beach, Bethany Beach, the areas I work every single day. You can find a really lovely move-in ready single family home in the high 4s to certainly into the low 6s. Absolutely beautiful communities, 4 seasons of life, walking distance, biking distance, Debbie runs, or a short drive to the beach. You want something newer, maybe in a resort community with amenities, a pool, pickleball, clubhouse. You're looking at mid-5s, well into the 700s in most cases. So let's go to Florida, getting on that plane, taking that little jaunt to Florida. In Sarasota, one of the most popular retirement markets, the median home price is so far over $500. And in the coastal neighborhoods closest to the water, you are absolutely looking at $800,000 to $1 million plus. And I'm not sure what that $800,000 home is gonna look like. Naples, same story, often higher. Now here's the thing. I am not saying Delaware is inexpensive. It's not. It's a desirable coastal market and prices reflect that. But here's the key question. What do you get for that price? And what does it cost you after you buy it? Because there's carrying costs in all of these areas that we live in. This is where it gets very, very interesting. Really, really interesting, okay? So the insurance, which I am actually now saying is like a big elephant in the room. Insurance in Florida is not for the faint of heart. Homeowners insurance has become a big, literally conversation. Get your arms around it. And people who moved to Florida 5 years ago did not see this coming. And it is a significant factor in why the tide, the pun is absolutely intended, has turned. Florida has been experiencing homeowners insurance crisis for several years, and many major insurers have either left the state or significantly reduced their coverage. And I just think that that is something that you've got to absolutely investigate up front, okay, up front. So I love Florida. I have family that lives in Florida. I visit Florida. But that insurance conversation is really becoming very, very difficult to swallow. So what does that insurance actually cost in coastal Florida? I've had clients, buyers tell me who were seriously considering Florida that they've got insurance quotes of $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a year. My homeowner's insurance in the home that I'm standing in right now is under $1,000 a year. That is not a typo, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. And then of course, if you're choosing to live on the coast, you've got to talk about flood insurance. And in many areas of Florida, flood insurance is actually becoming very, very, very difficult to even secure. Okay, on that plane, I'm on my way back to coastal Delaware. Delaware is not immune to storms. We're on the coast, we understand what coastal weather means, and we certainly have our fair share of some nor'easters, etc. But our insurance market has not experienced the same catastrophic collapse that Florida has. A typical homeowner's policy in coastal Delaware, depending on location, proximity to water, the home itself often runs in the range of, mine, as I said, about $1,000 to really topping out at about $3,000 a year. If you're in a flood zone, yes, flood insurance is going to add some additional cost to that, but nothing in comparison to what it would cost you in Florida. So you do the math. If you're saving $7,000 to $9,000 a year on insurance over 10 years, that's $70,000 to $90,000. That's real money. That's cars, that's travel. That's your grandkids' college fund. Something that I'm working on right now as we speak. Hey guys, as much as I absolutely love making these videos, what I love the absolute most in making the videos is really talking, encouraging, nurturing your desire to know more about coastal Delaware. I've helped countless families. I've helped families from the Mid-Atlantic. I've helped families from the South. I've helped individuals from Metro New York and New England gather the information that helps them make the right decision if relocating here is what they truly want to do. So whether you're coming out next week, next month, or for gosh sakes in 2027, I would absolutely love to connect with you. If you've missed the on-screen pop-up, you can certainly find again all of my contact information linked below. Property taxes. This is really Delaware's secret weapon, okay? And it's the one that surprises almost everyone who hasn't done their research. And it's one of Delaware's most powerful advantages. Our property taxes are really, really, really low. Delaware notably has some of the lowest property taxes in the entire country, not just compared to Florida, but compared to absolutely everywhere. And our effective property tax rate is typically around 0.5 to 0.6 of the assessed value. So let me put that in real numbers. On a $500,000 home in coastal Delaware, you might pay somewhere in the range of $1,200 to $1,800 in annual property taxes. In some cases, even less, especially with the new 2025 assessments that were just done. And truly, property taxes did not go up. So if you're a Delaware resident who happens to be 65 or older, and you've been here for several years, you might qualify for the senior school property tax credit, which can bring that already very low property tax down again. Now, Florida. Florida actually has some nice tax protections for permanent residents. They have the homestead exemption, and it is real and it helps. But Florida also has higher overall assessed values, and many of the popular coastal counties, this drives those tax bills up pretty dramatically. $600,000 home, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 a year, depending on the county and the local millage rates. So you've got lower insurance, you've got lower property taxes here in Delaware. It's a big deal. And again, back to that first opening line. You do the math, okay? I keep reminding you, you do it, get out that legal pad, however you jot down your numbers, and you run those two columns side by side. State income tax and retirement income, okay? This is the one where people sometimes push back on me. I want to address it absolutely head on. Florida has no state income tax, zero, zilch. And for high income retirees with significant investment income or large pension payouts, this is a real and meaningful advantage. So again, I always speak with candor and honesty. Delaware does have a state income tax. The rates go up to about 6.6% at the very high brackets. So again, that is something that you do want to consider. Does this cancel out everything I just said? Not necessarily, and here's why. Okay, so here's why. Because Delaware does have some very generous retirement income exclusions. If you're 60 or older, Delaware excludes up to 12.5 of pension and eligible retirement income from state taxes. So for a couple, that's $25,000 of retirement income annually that Delaware simply does not tax. Social Security income is also not taxed at all in Delaware. So again, if your retirement income is primarily Social Security and a moderate pension or IRA distribution, your actual Delaware state income tax bill might be surprisingly small, or even, my favorite number is zero. I love zero, okay? If you're a high income retiree with a large investment portfolio kicking off 6 figures of income annually, Florida's zero income tax is a definite advantage, and you should run the full numbers with your CPA or your financial planner. But for the typical retiree, Social Security plus a pension or 401k, when you factor in lower property taxes, dramatically lower insurance, and the retirement income exclusions, the overall tax picture in Delaware is often comparable to Florida and sometimes better, okay? Sometimes better. Every situation is different, so I'm gonna say it again. Bring your CPA into the conversation. Bring your financial planner into the conversation. Run your specific numbers. Don't assume Florida wins on taxes without actually doing the analysis for your specific situation. I'll say it again. Do the math, okay? The weather. So this is the one that I actually love to chat about, okay? And I'm gonna be honest with you. I love summer and I love heat, but I promised you honesty. So here it is. Florida wins on winter weather. Full stop. If you hate the cold, if the idea of putting on a coat makes you want to move immediately, and if January temperatures below 50 degrees are a deal breaker, Florida is probably your climate. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, okay? I'm absolutely not going to pretend otherwise. But here's what I want you to think about. Winds in the winter, maybe winds in several months, coastal Delaware summers are genuinely spectacular. And here I am in June of 2026. We're talking low to mid 80s, ocean breezes, beautiful days on the beach that feel like a reward. It is legitimately gorgeous here from April through October, sometimes into November. 6, 7, 8 months of amazing. Our shoulder seasons, April into May, October, November, they're lovely, they're mild, they're peaceful. The beach towns have a wonderful energy when the summer crowds kind of quiet down. Now let's talk about Florida summers. Florida summers are hot, and I don't mean pleasantly warm, I mean heat index of 105 degrees, afternoon thunderstorms every single day, humidity so thick you feel like you're walking through a wet towel. Debbie's hair goes like that Okay, that's the kind of humidity. I have had multiple buyers tell me, people who went to Florida, tried it and called me. They expected the summers would be manageable because they'd been visiting Florida in the winter for years. They were not prepared for Florida in June, July, August, and I truly believe September. Many Florida retirees actually leave Florida in the summer. They come back up north. We call them the snowbirds. They travel. They have a second property. Here in Delaware, summer is the best time to be here. You're going to the beach. You're not fleeing from the heat. So yes, Florida wins in January. Delaware wins July. And for a lot of people, when they actually think about their lifestyle, when they think about whether they'd rather suffer through a Delaware winter, which is small, short, and very, very manageable, the answer isn't as obvious as they originally thought. Plus, Delaware has 4 actual seasons, okay? Fall foliage, the holidays with crisp air and cozy vibes, spring blooms. There's a quality of life in all 4 seasons that a lot of people genuinely miss when they move somewhere that has one. And that one season is hot, okay? So you do the math. I know that weather doesn't have a math quotient, but and then you think about the hurricanes and the natural hazard risks that are also inherent in life in Florida. So I'm gonna be straightforward here because you deserve the full picture. Delaware is not hurricane proof. We are on the coast. We can and do get impacted by tropical systems, okay? Nor'easters and a bit of coastal flooding. But there is a meaningful difference in risk profile in coastal Delaware than where Florida is located. It's at the tip of a peninsula, it juts into the Gulf and the Atlantic. It makes it significantly more vulnerable to direct hurricane strikes. You all watch the news, you all watch the Weather Channel. The last several years, Ian, Idalia, Helene, Milton, they've caused catastrophic damage in specific Florida markets. Fort Myers Beach, parts of the Tampa Bay area. The damage was real, it was severe, and the insurance consequences have been massive, massive, and long lasting. Delaware sits in a mid-Atlantic position where storms, by the time they reach us, often have weakened or changed track. That's not a guarantee. I am not a meteorologist. Storms are unpredictable, but historically, our exposure to direct major hurricane landfalls meaningfully lower than Florida's Gulf or South Atlantic coast. And that risk differential is directly reflected in our insurance costs, which brings us right back to the numbers we've already talked about. You do the math, you do the math, you do the math, okay? And proximity to family and major cities. Now, this is one that I am so passionate about. And it's very personal to every family, but it's particularly personal to me because it really makes my quality of life so much better. One of the things I hear most often from buyers who choose Delaware over Florida is this: we wanted to be close enough that the kids could actually come visit. My kids visit all the time. They drive here. They don't need to fly here. It's not boats, planes, and trains. It's a car. It's a road trip. Coastal Delaware is incredibly well positioned for the Mid-Atlantic corridor. We're about 2.5 hours from Philadelphia, 2 to 3 hours from Washington, D.C., 2 hours to Annapolis. I have a daughter who lives there. About 4 hours to Richmond. Have a son who lives there. 4.5 hours to New York City. This means my daughter can drive for a long weekend. My sons can get here to celebrate, big occasions with me and holidays. And that is just so important to me. I get all the summer holidays, I might add. You compare that to Florida. If your family is in Philadelphia or DC or New York, a visit to Florida requires flights, planning, expense. It goes from a casual weekend trip to a real, vacation. And while that is lovely when it happens, I believe it happens less often. I've had buyers who tried Florida and came back to Delaware specifically because of this. They loved the idea of Florida, but they missed their grandkids. And a 4-hour drive versus a 600, and that's modest, round-trip flight makes a significant difference in how often grandkids actually show up. And you know that I am the proud Dee Dee / Mimsy of 4 grand kiddos, hopefully more, coming. But what does coastal Delaware actually feel like? And I know that I've done video after video. We've done the numbers. Let me paint you a picture, and I hope I'm gonna be as scenic as possible. Coastal Delaware is small. It's intentionally, beautifully small. Rehoboth Beach has a boardwalk, a fabulous restaurant and shopping scene, art galleries, live music, a farmer's market, and it is genuinely beloved and a town character that is just so unique. It's lively without being overwhelming. Lewes is charming in a storybook way. It's historic, it's walkable, it's the kind of town where you know your neighbors and the coffee shop owner knows your order. Bethany Beach is a bit quieter, it's more residential. People call it the quiet resort, and they mean it as a compliment. Beautiful beach, family friendly, peaceful. You know, we have outlet shopping, we have great dining that has gotten legitimately excellent. Farm to table, fresh seafood, amazing variety. We have kayaking and paddleboarding. We have birding in the state park, cycling on the Junction and Breakwater Trail, running, of course, through all of these communities as well. And critically, Delaware has no sales tax, zero. If you love to shop, and I know many of you do, buying anything from clothing to furniture to cars in Delaware means you keep more of that money every single time with every single purchase. The pace of life here is coastal. It's unhurried, it's friendly, it's community oriented, and I genuinely believe that's what a lot of people are actually looking for. They just didn't know Delaware had, and boy do we have it. We have it all. So, the turning tide. Who is making this move? Okay, so who exactly is calling me and saying, tell me about coastal Delaware instead of Florida? It's a fascinating mix. It's an absolutely, some are people who planned Florida for years. They did their research. They started getting insurance quotes and had a financial reality check. The numbers just didn't add up the way they had expected, okay? Some are people who've actually moved to Florida and are coming back. They're calling me from Naples or Sarasota or Fort Myers saying, we love the winters, but the summers are brutal and our insurance just went up again and we miss being near our family. They're looking for an exit ramp, and I am more than happy to help them with that. Some are people in their early to mid 60s who haven't retired yet, but are starting to plan. They're running the full picture analysis for the first time, and they're surprised to find Delaware in the conversation. They're absolutely surprised. And some are people who have been coming to Rehoboth or Lewes or Bethany as vacationers for years, renting a house every summer, loving every minute, and they're finally thinking, what if we just stayed? What if we didn't go home? If you're in any of these categories, welcome. You're in the right place. Keep watching. I do this all the time. The topics are, always light and entertaining, but most importantly, they're informative. So let's put it all together. Let's do that math summary. I told you, let's do the math. I told you to do the math. Now I'm going to help you with that math. I promised it to you side by side. Let's compare a hypothetical scenario. A retired couple purchasing a $550,000 home in coastal Delaware versus a comparable home in a popular Florida coastal market. Annual costs in Delaware. Property taxes, approximately $1,200 to maybe $2,000. Homeowners insurance, approximately $1,200 to $3,000. State income tax, low to zero for most retirees given exclusions, and total annual costs beyond the mortgage, roughly $3,500 to $5,000. Annual costs comparable Florida coastal market. Property taxes, approximately $7,000 to $9,000. Homeowners insurance, $8,000 to $14,000 or more in many markets. State income tax, we talked about that, zero. Total annual costs, $14,000 to $23,000 in Florida. The difference, even at a conservative estimate, can easily be $10,000 to $15,000 per year. Over 10 years, $100,000 to $150,000 of tangible, hard-earned money. That is a life-changing amount of money. That's the beach cottage you rent every year for your kids and grandkids. That's the trip to Italy you always talked about taking. That's financial breathing room in retirement that most people didn't expect to be possible. So as I said, you do the math, or pick up the phone and call me and we'll do it together. I'd love to chat with you. So what I want you to do next is, if this video made you think, if the numbers surprised you, if you are someone who wrote Delaware off without really looking at it, or if you've been vaguely curious but never dug in, here's what I want you to do, okay? First, love you to subscribe to my channel. You know how to do that. I put out videos regularly about life in coastal Delaware, the real estate market, the communities, the things to do, the questions you should be asking. This channel is your guide. Second, I'd love you to reach out to me. I am so available to you. You know, I'm Debbie Siskowski. I am a professional realtor. I live here, I play here, I work here, and I thrive here. I've got lots of certifications, which means that I am specifically credentialed to work with buyers in or approaching retirement. I know this market, I love this community, and I will give you straight answers. No pressure, no sales pitch, just absolute real information. You know how to reach me, 610-357-0610. It's probably on the screen right now. Call me, text me, however you're comfortable. I will absolutely always answer. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments. I read every comment, and if there's something specific you want me to address, a neighborhood, a cost question, a lifestyle question, tell me and I'll make a video about it. Thanks again. Debbie from Live, Love, Beach to Bay. Until next time.